West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes. Welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel and Santokie here, and with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santokie Nagalendran. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, Mash, and I think this is probably like our 6th or 7th video in the last 7 days. Obviously West Indies have been taking licks against Nepal and then licks against India, and we've been there to capture it all in video form. Thank you to everyone who's watched the videos. I think we've totaled over about 70,000 views. When you add up all the videos over the last week, nobody does West Indies cricket like the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, but we're here, Mash, to look at a more of a timeless sort of issue in terms of West Indies and what's going on behind the scenes. And this all points to West Indies held their quarterly performance meetings. So Cricket West Indies, they do a media conference available for YouTube and the media to ask questions. They held their one on October the 1st. And these ones are always a strange one, Mash, because you never really know what you're going to get. We've had ones before where Darren Sammy out of nowhere was announced as the test coach. We had one in March or April where Craig Brathwaite announced he was resigning as captain. We had the last one following 27 all out where not much really happened. So you never really know if you're going to hear bombshell news or if it's going to be a run-of-the-mill press conference. I would say this one was leaning more towards being a bombshell sort of press conference. And I think, Mash, it's plain to see the key theme to take from this press conference is Cricket West Indies, man. Financially, it's a recession out here. We're down bad when it comes to finances, and we're seeing actual major repercussions affecting sort of the game at a grassroots level and on the field. So we're here to dissect what happened in that press conference. And just for clarification, at the conference, it was obviously Cricket West Indies president, Dr. Kearshaw Shallow, director of cricket, so Mars Bascom, in charge of everything that sort of takes on field, the tournaments, the fixtures, all those operational kind of things, and Chris Darin, the Cricket West Indies chief executive, who kind of looks at financially, market and sponsorship. So you had all sort of angles. And I guess, Mash, let's go to the first headline. So the first point that was announced was this had kind of been seeping in local media, so it wasn't a massive shock for us, but it was announced officially that CCC, so Combined Colleges and Campuses, and West Indies Academy will no longer be taking part in regional competitions. So starting with Super 50 and then the 4-day season, those two teams are gone. Vamush, they're out of here. And it will just be six regional sides going forward. And what interested me was, rather than it being styled out as, we're doing this to restructure, improve the quality of the regional season, Miles Bascom was straight. He said, listen, we haven't got the money. Financially, it's not viable to have 8 teams in our regional season. We're going to have to cut the amount of games in regional cricket. Your immediate reaction and thoughts on that, Mash?
Yeah, it's interesting that we start with that point because I guess my gut instinct let's just focus on this specific point rather than everything else. We'll get to everything else afterwards. But on this specific point, my gut instinct is that some people will say, that's not good. You shouldn't be cutting the regional games. And how will the players get better if they're playing less games? The players won't get better if they play less games. The players won't get better if they play more games. The reality, so for me, I'm not bothered by it because the players are going to suck with 15 games. They're going to suck with 20 games. They're going to suck with 5 games, right? On the issues to fix whatever is going wrong in West Indies cricket are deeper than how many games they play, right? You can play 20 games and be like, look what happened in the last 4-day championship, right? Jason Mohammed top scored, and we were legitimately having conversations whether 38-year-old Jason Mohammed should make a test match debut. Like, come on. Like, this is showing us, and this is no disrespect to Jason Mohammed, but this is showing us where our domestic cricket is at, right? I think you and I have said for quite some time now that the numbers in domestic cricket don't mean anything. It doesn't really translate to anything. Mikhail Louis top scored 2 years ago, came into test cricket scrambling. Kevlin Anderson, top scorer or number 2 this year or number 3 this year. Mitchell Stark showed him what levels are. Like, the numbers in our domestic cricket, Carrie Pierre just took 41 wickets, bowled down, length down everyone, right? India made him realize, no, you're domestic, man. This is levels, right? So our domestic cricket, you can play 1,000 games in a season. I'm not convinced it's going to do anything. CCC have been traditionally terrible in domestic cricket. So losing them, CCC is basically a Barbados B team. So losing them doesn't really mean anything. The academy side, I think there's an argument that you could bring to say we should probably keep the academy in and around it to help some of those academy players who are obviously talented. I think it's beneficial for the young academy players to experience a higher level, right? And my concern, Santokie, by cutting CCC and cutting West Indies Academy is what happens now to some, it won't be all, but what happens to some of those academy players who no longer have a first-class system to play in? Is the plan to give them more academy games against other emerging players around the world? If so, cool, I've got no issue with it. But what happens to those academy players that have technically graduated from the academy, but none of the franchises pick them up, or are part of the academy, are talented, but now don't have 7 first-class games a year, or don't have 7 Super 50 games because their franchise won't pick them up? So do you see where I'm coming from? So there are some issues around it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a black and white case of saying, oh, this is a terrible decision or this is a great decision. I think there's pros and cons. I agree with you completely. We said it since we started the podcast. CCC, we don't really know what it means for, what it exists for. It's kind of a mishmash of, you get experienced players. So, for example, this year was Kieran Powell and Shamar Brooks in the side, and then you sort of got a mishmash of players that they're not like young emerging players. They're sort of players who have just fallen into a grey area of not being able to make a regional side, and it just becomes a muddled. And even like how, remember, was it 2 years ago? There was a thing, advert where it was like 24 hours before the tournament started. It was like, email Darren Ganger your CV and we'll see if we can put you in CCC. So it just felt like what was the whole aim of CCC? So I'm not really mourning the loss of CCC. My concern is, like you said, the academy, because if you look, you can take the India test as a recent example. We called up Johan Lane essentially directly from the West Indies Academy 4-day side to the senior side. So, and those are the next generation of players. So if there's assurances that these guys are going to be given spots in their franchise sides, then that's fine. That's great. But we know how this works, Mash, especially with the territorial system. It's not going to be like that. We're going to see guys graduate from the academy and we won't hear of them again until they're like 28, 29. Like there'll be a void where they're not getting picked for their franchise sides, because territories are going to pick the guys who they think will win them the tournament title. And those guys tend to be the experienced guys. They're not going to, unless you've got an exceptional talent, you're not really going to risk it unless there's an incentive. And Cricket West Indies haven't expanded on this. If there's an incentive to essentially pick academy guys or pick the youth men, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I think for me, I don't think it's like you said, if we played 20 league games a season, Jason Mohammed will still be top scorer. It is what it is. I think the concern is, are we at a point, Mash? Because this wasn't clarified. Obviously, at the moment in the regional season, you play 7 Red Bull games, and then there was usually either the Headley Weeks Tri-Series or 18 games. Johnny Grave had been very clear that he wanted the regional players to be able to play 10 first-class games in a season. Now that we've gone down to 6 regional sides, does this mean, are we going to play 5 regional games in a season and then still have the 3 first-class games, Headley Weeks or 18 tour, or is it just going to be 5? Because I think if we're just relying on players to sort of develop to a minimum standard playing a 5-game season, it's not going to happen, Mash. You think of those 5 games, at least one will get rained off in the Caribbean, right? Yeah. So essentially, you're going to have players playing 3 or 4 first-class games, and that's it for the year. And that can't be good.
That got Tay Shandapal back into the test team. But no, I agree with you though. They didn't make it clear, and as much as I just did that monologue about it doesn't matter if they play 1,000 or if they play 5. I do think 5 is probably not enough.
Yeah, 5's not enough. Yeah. Even as down bad as we are, you need to have a sort of a minimum standard of games. But what I think, Mash, I think the wider issue is, and we'll go onto this now, is it's surely got to be concerning that West Indies, because obviously last year the headlines were, we've had a home World Cup, we've made this surplus of money. That money is obviously gone now, because suddenly you're saying, listen, our funds are so down bad at the moment, we're going to have to cut 2. Can you imagine any other sort of nation, test playing nation, saying we're going to have to cut 2 first-class teams? Because imagine England just saying, all right, Northants and Derbyshire, we're going to have to cut them, we haven't got money to run this regional season anymore. That's essentially what we're saying. We're saying we can't have a league of 8 teams. We haven't got enough money. It's not sustainable. And also out of Super 50. So just looking at it from that, Mash, that's also a concern financially. If you look at all the money going into cricket, particularly like the franchise level, and now you see at an international level, Cricket West Indies, one of the major cricketing boards, can't even afford to have an 18 regional season. That in itself is probably more of a headline than anything else.
I wonder if they considered. Do you remember back in the day we used to have like couple county teams turn up in their off season to come do some summer train or warm weather training in the Caribbean and basically play in our competition. I wonder if they considered reaching out to whether USA, Canada, couple county teams and saying, as long as you're willing to pay, whether all of the funding or at least a majority of the funding, then you get your teams that way, right? I wonder if they thought outside of the box in that regard. But again, that type of thing didn't come up in the thing. Let me just pivot, Santokie, because I think it links to this point, but we have to go a bit further on it. So some of the challenges they spoke about in terms of things affecting West Indies cricket off the back of this, the quality of regional tournaments, they spoke about an underperforming franchise system, inadequate fitness and conditioning standards, on gaps in infrastructure and facilities. And what was interesting is one of the things they also said now needs to change is they said accountability and standards need to improve. And they said that franchise teams, and for those who are watching this who aren't from the Caribbean, in this sense, franchise does literally mean the nations and islands. So Leewards, Windwards, Guyana, Trinidad, Barbados, Jamaica, etc. And they said franchise teams will now submit individual development plans and meet new minimum standards. Player fitness will be closely tracked, supported by a new regional fitness leaderboard. But here's my thing, and good. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but this is something you and I have raised before, Santo. This is why I think Cricket West Indies should hire us, because didn't you and I raise literally about 18 months ago, what's the key performance indicators for these franchises? They just get money, waste it, players are still shit, nothing improves. So you mean to tell me that it took a big press conference and committees meeting to realize you need to have key performance indicators and hold people to a standard? You don't just get money for nothing out here. You got to do. Have you met your standards? And if not, why are we giving you the money? Like, how did they only just realize this?
Exactly. That accountability has been lacking, and obviously that was one positive to introduce that. But it's mind-boggling that this hasn't already been a process up until now. And why have you had to announce it in a press conference? And I guess, Mash, the next big point links into that lack of money and the cutting, because what Miles Bascom also announced was going forward now for series, they're going to limit the amount of venues. So he said it was what $200,000 to go from island to island for West Indies. So let's say last year when Australia, or earlier this year when Australia came, we played a white ball series in St. Kitts and then Trinidad. It would have cost $200,000. And Jamaica. So it would have cost $400,000 to transport. So what they're saying now is they're going to limit it. By that, I imagine it means playing multiple tests in the same country and T20 and ODI series in the same country. What's interesting is it was hinted that obviously some governments aren't as supportive as other governments. And so the priority will be given to governments who are willing to sort of fund that hosting. So, Mash, what are we saying next year? Every test out here in Guyana, with that money.
Well, so it's going to be very, very interesting, because I want to know which nations have not been subsidizing travel. We're soon going to find out, because when the cricket don't go there anymore, that will basically tell us those nations have been charging West Indies top dollar just to come into the country and transport and this, that. So, I don't even want to speculate, Santokie. Because, I mean, there's rumors already that Barbados have got whether the Sri Lanka test or Pakistan test next year. Jamaica, I think, have just announced that they've got some white ball stuff next year. Can't remember who they said they've got next year. Was it the South Africa? No, South Africa's away.
It was the white ball Sri Lanka games, I think.
Is it Sri Lanka? Yeah. So Jamaica have announced that they've got some stuff next year. So that type of stuff will leak very, very soon, right? And we'll get an idea. And to be honest, Santokie, I'm not mad at it. I think for West Indies to survive as an entity, we've got to exist as almost like okay, the West Indies Federation never really got off the ground properly back in the 50s, 60s, right? But for West Indies to exist as an entity, we have to have some kind of federation, right? Whether it's working in tandem with CARICOM, whether it's working in tandem with the regional leaders that give a damn about cricket, which looks like Irfan, Mia. Boy, Rowley's gone now in Trinidad, so maybe it's just Irfan and Mia. But whether it's finding those lead Ralph in Vinci, but he might lose. There's an election coming up in Vinci, so he might lose his influence. So where do you think we have to work with, like, because Irfan looks like, obviously Guyana is oil rich now. Is it a case of West Indies just sidling up to Irfan and saying, boy, you see that oil money, just help us out in it? Like, does Guyana just have to take the lead and say, boy, here's the funding? But Guyana has to care about Guyana. They can't fund the rest of the Caribbean. And
yeah,
do you see where I'm coming from?
It's an interesting one because weaves politics and finances, because then I completely agree with what you're saying. If Guyana's, like, they've shown with the Global Super League, right? And Irfan Ali, like I think Ian Bishop said during the CPL, is the first time he's seen a president go on the pitch during the CPL final and do bowling practice with the batters. He done commentary. He's obviously a massive cricket fan and he's willing to put his money behind him and fund cricket. But how much is he obligated to help the rest of the region in terms of funding when his mandate is to look after Guyana, right? So the Global Super League is to benefit tourism in Guyana. Should we account on him having goodwill for the region in terms of like you said, almost like a West Indies federation, and be like, cool, we're one West Indies. Do I spend some of our funds on helping the Caribbean? Obviously, remember he's in CARICOM as well. He's the head of CARICOM, right? So he does have some sort of obligation. But at the same time, in terms of the Guyana government, you're still accountable for your spending. So you can't just splash money on helping West Indies cricket when your country's still impoverished, right? And you need to help out domestic matters. So that'll be an interesting one to see. I do sort of agree. Like, if you take the Australia series, we went to Jamaica, then St. Kitts, and then Trinidad for the white ball games. For me, it doesn't make a difference. If you held all those white ball games in Jamaica, it's not going to affect the quality of play. And then if it's saving Cricket West Indies 400k on flights, you might as well just have it there. I don't think too many. The only people will be complaining is obviously if certain governments aren't funding the cricket, they're the people of that island are going to miss out on international cricket for the next few years, right? But in terms of logistically and financially, that seems like an easy one straight away to save money. It's a no-brainer, right? You just cut that, you limit the venues, and then you save that money. So for me, I've got no real issues with that. And like you said, by sort of rules of deduction, you'll be able to work out which governments have been sort of helping West Indies cricket and funding them, because they'll be the ones hosting the major series next year. So that'll be an interesting one. And I guess the third major point we're going to talk about, Mash, because we said we'll try to keep this 25 minutes. We don't want to go on too long. Just keep it concise with the points. Was one I think you kind of ended up asking a question about as well. But Chris Deering, the chief executive, talked about sponsorship and marketing. And for me, Mash, I don't know whether to laugh or whether it's meant to be serious, but one of the valid points was Brian Lara and Sir Viv going to India to play golf on a mission, like a fact-finding mission.
You know what, Santokie? When they said that, there's a part of me going, what? Like, we were openly saying that we're sending man to basically go and twerk. But that's what we were saying, Santokie. That's effectively what we were saying.
What? How can we have a big press conference, yeah? Like, a big press conference to the media, and we're essentially saying the future of sponsorship relies on Lara and Viv whining and dining man in India and just hoping someone opens a checkbook. Like, what sort of contingency plan is that, Mash? That's got to be the most West Indian way of sponsorship and marketing I've ever heard of. And there wasn't even it wasn't like, okay, cool, they're going to meet this person, that person. It was like, nope, they're going to play golf and then we're going to see what happens in India. Like, it was the most vague sponsorship plan ever. And I think then you went on to ask a question about how much is Cricket West Indies accountable for securing sponsorship, and how much onus do we put on territorial boards? So why can't the Barbados Cricket Association or Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board work on securing their own sponsorship to help their cricket? So I think you referenced even like having inter-island tours using that sponsorship money, rather than all of the pressure and sort of onus being on Cricket West Indies to sponsor every sort of territory in the region.
Yeah, but that's the thing, and that's why I asked the question, Santokie. And I think, to be fair to Chris and Miles and Kishore, I think they repeatedly said we're the only cricket board that has to fund everything. Like, no one's finding their... And that's why I asked the question, was like, what? No one's finding their own funding. Everyone's just doing the please, sir, give me some more. to central funding. Cricket West Indies moving like IMF out here. It don't make no sense. Like, and the thing is, Chris did make reference to the Olympics are coming up, and I think he spoke about Pan American Games, and that might encourage governments to invest in their own cricket and so on and so forth. But if you're going to send Brian Lara and Viv out to go and twerk to get money, you might as well send them to Saudi and try get that Saudi money. Like, and don't get me wrong, maybe there's some Indian philanthropists who are like, boy, let's save West Indies cricket. Let's put all of this money that we dash into IPL and this, that, saving West Indies, almost like a football manager save, but cricket, right? Let's try and take West Indies from the doldrum with my Indian money and help save them. Cool. But the real money's in Saudi, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know what?
Why not send them man to Saudi?
Man will cost you, but at this point in time, surely it's been widely said in the media, Saudi Arabia are looking to get into cricket, right? They're trying to invest in cricket. Surely you can. West Indies is such a brand, and Saudi wants that link with a brand, right? West Indies cricket is such a brand. Surely you could either have some sort of development there, academy program there, or, I mean, this will get cussed out in the region. You could even host a West Indies Test or white ball series in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, WrestleMania's in Saudi Arabia. Yeah. We can hold West Indies Test in Saudi, you know. Everything's in the boxing main events are in Saudi. They'll soon be. In fact, I'm sure it's already happened. Isn't like one of the Italian Super Cup finals in Saudi or something like that. So who are we to say no to Saudi? We best just go over there.
And the thing is, yeah, like when it comes to football and, like, you know, the boxing moving to Saudi and football and all that kind of thing, the main complaint is fans from the domestic country. So if you're Italian, you'll miss out on watching the Super Cup in person. West Indies Test games, we get about 7 man and a dog at every game. So it's not even as if we're going to lose a massive crowd. We've got nothing to lose. If you're forward thinking, you can see sort of where the money's going in the world. Surely you would head towards that, because like you said, the Indian one just seems like you're relying on someone with old money, a philanthropist or someone who's got a love for West Indies cricket, to just give it to you randomly. Whereas I think you can achieve something longer term. Obviously, I don't know the ins and outs or if this has been attempted, but surely Saudi Arabia would be sort of more where you'd want to link if you were looking purely for just financial support to help the Cricket West Indies program.
Listen, I know we're going to go, so I should just point out to people there were 2 other, because ultimately with all of these things that they've said, it's important. Well, the Caribbean doesn't work like this, but there, as we often say in Caribbean Cricket Podcast, there's no quick fix, right? All of these things they want to do, none of them are magic wand things, but the things that they have said that they're aiming to get done within the next 6 months, just to clarify for people who maybe haven't tuned in, they've said that the accountability standards is now. That's happening within now to 6 months in terms of reframing what standards franchises have to meet. The high performance upgrade at CCG is within now to 6 months. Modern nets, gym, rehabilitation, infrastructure. And in fairness, Santokie, pumping the money into to upgrade CCG might be why they've cut money elsewhere in terms of domestic cricket. And then the last one, which we should just mention before we go, because it's another thing that they've identified as an immediate improvement. They've said to recruit an internationally proven batting coach to work all across the West Indies system, and a full-time sports psychologist performance coach will join the senior men's team. The women's team's role already exists, but will be upgraded to a full-time role. I will just say the following, Santokie. I thought we already had a sports psychologist. So what on earth have these men been? Yeah.
Well, it's just Sammy asking them, "Oh, you feeling good today, bro?
You good? You good? You get through?" Man coming in after a duck, and a man just going, "You get through?"
Oh my days!
So sports psychologists to help these men, which I'm not going to criticize. I think that's a good thing. Should have already been in place. But the batting coach one, Santokie, I think that I have to assume is in response to what is go back to what Kyron Pollard told us so many years ago when he came on the podcast. There is a batting crisis in the region. Yeah. And it seems now, Pollard came on, 3 years ago? It seems now we've finally accepted as a region, there's probably a batting issue in this region now, and we need to do something about it.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously in the past we've had batting mentors, we've had Lara come and work with the team, but I think you need someone who's not going to be a former headline player or all that kind of thing. You basically need someone who knows the fundamentals of the game as a proper coach to just work quietly with these guys and try and help them, because that's badly needed. So as you said, those appointments badly needed anyway, so those are welcome. And I think they did mention obviously they are going to use funding to have more camps with the
good point.
19s. And I think it's also important to mention in terms of the cuts with the women's game, they also announced the T20 Blaze and the 50 over domestic women's tournament are just going to be combined into one now, so it's not going to be two separate tournaments, and that's obviously to cut travel and sort of cut the logistics. So Mash, I think the thing to take, sort of the main takeaway from this press conference was this was a press conference to say, look, we're in dire straits when it comes to money, and it's cut. Like, we're not looking to expand anything. We got to work within our means, at least for the next financial year.
These men doing austerity,
Yeah, austerity out here, like literally. And the thing is, like, we're going on. We know. Obviously, Shallow, Bascom, and Devin, they've all come on Caribbean Cricket Podcast at one time or another. We know they're intelligent men. They've achieved things outside of cricket, so it's not even as if it's not for a lack of trying. I think this is just the reality of where Cricket West Indies are, and when you couple that with our bad results, it's not looking good. It's not a good picture being painted. If you watch that press conference, there wasn't much positive to take from it. It was basically, as you said, austerity. We're going to cut. The regional season's being cut. The women's game, we're cutting things. All levels are going to be affected, and we just have to work within our means and get through it. And it does seem at this point, Mash, it'd have to be. I don't know what will come of Lara and Viv's trip to India, but it does seem like there would have to be some sort of magic pill to sort of get West Indies making profitability. Because if we're saying this 1 year after a home World Cup, we're in dire straits, what can save us? Because the World Cup should really set you up for the next 4 or 5 years financially.
And England and India ain't coming anytime soon, right? So you know what I think, and the last thing I'll just say, and we are going, people, is just this: there are going to be some of you that comment below and say this, that, and the third. But this, I think, what the press conference should hopefully have taught people is this: there is no way to fix things in West Indies cricket unless there is a magic investment of money from somewhere. And if it's not going to come from corporate Caribbean, then we're going to have to find somebody from outside the Caribbean. So when people say to us, why don't they do this and drop this man and drop that man and do this? The reason why we always go, what's that going to do? That press conference basically showed you why all those short-term do this, do that is never actually going to fix anything. Santokie, there's more pain before we see any light at the end of this tunnel.
100%. I think that was, you could tell that from the tone and the body language and the words of those in the press conference. But I will give credit to Cricket West Indies. I've said this before. They're probably the only board in cricket, the cricketing world, who open up a press conference for YouTube comments and questions as well. So it was a very, very transparent press conference despite the bad news. But Mash, that's been it. We said we'll try to keep this to under half an hour. We've just about managed to do that. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe. Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Nobody does it like us. We're on Instagram, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, Facebook.com, and most importantly, just coming across the ticker at the bottom, www.patreon.com/CaribCricket, where you can support with any donations to keep the movement going. Now, we'll be back, in the coming days. We still have a lot to talk about in the region. Contract, the new contracts we're given for the next financial year. We're going to look at sort of who won and who lost in terms of gaining a contract and the headlines from that. West Indies obviously played a second test on Friday after taking licks against India. We're back again, 5 a.m. alarms on Friday, ready for that. We'll be doing daily lives regarding that. And then it's non-stop after that because we go to Bangladesh for the white ball series. And who knows what sort of autumn of licks we're going to be taking out after the end of We had the summer of licks. The summer of Sammy, we took the licks. Now we're going into the winter, and then it might be a winter of discontent, more licks in New Zealand. So
listen, I've been Machel, I'll say Patrick Hewitt, Santokie's been Santokie. We've been the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and we'll be back very, very soon. Peace.
West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.